Anderson Cooper, AC 360, CNN weeknights 10 Eastern.
People and corporations trying to buy elections. Now, they're spending tens of millions of dollars to sway your vote, but they're trying to keep it secret. They're spending all that money, but they aren't running for office, and they're not putting themselves in front of the voters. Zero accountability, and it's all perfectly legal. According to a report from Public Citizen, in the 2004 election, 98% of outside political groups disclosed the names of their donors. This time around, it's 32%. So where's the money going? Well, in a lot of cases, to fund ads for candidates around the country. Here's one new ad that popped up in West Virginia.
I happen to have been an early supporter of Barack Obama. I campaigned with him in the hills of West Virginia. And I proudly chaired the Arab Americans for Obama campaign, a nationwide group dedicated to mobilizing Arab Americans and bringing light to those issues we care about.
Call Nick Ray Hall and tell him what you care about at 202-225-3452. The West Virginia Conservative Foundation is responsible for the content of this advertising.
All right, so that's the ad, and you can agree or disagree with the message. That's not what we're talking about. What you can't do is find out who's pushing that message. Now, I know it says the group's name at the end of the ad. Here it is, in case you missed it.
The West Virginia Conservative Foundation is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Who's behind the West Virginia Conservative Foundation? The ad buy cost nearly $250,000, so whose money is it? Well, we put a team of staffers and interns on it today to try to find out. First thing we wanted to know is the group affiliated with Congressman Ray Hall's challenger, Spike Maynard. We called his campaign.
This is Ann Clifford calling from CNN's AC 360. I was wondering if I could speak with Mr. Carpenter.
Spike Maynard's office told us they had nothing to do with the ad or the organization. So next we called the head of the state Republican Party, Mike Stewart.
I'm calling from CNN's AC 360. We had a couple of quick questions we were wondering if we could ask you.
Well, Mr. Stewart denied any GOP connection to the ad. He also, until recently, headed up the West Virginia Conservative Foundation, but he wouldn't disclose any donor names. And after all our calls, we still haven't been able to find out whose money paid for that ad. And it's not just conservative groups, it's liberal ones as well. The AFL-CIO, the Sierra Club, the American Dental Association. There's a group called Florida is Not for Sale, which, according to the Center for Responsive Politics, spent $50,000 to attack a Senate primary candidate. According to the Washington Post, outside groups have spent $80 million so far in this campaign. That's 5 times greater than it was for the 2006 midterms, and the campaign's not over yet. And there's a huge loophole. These groups only have to start reporting buys within 30 days of the primary and 60 days of the general election, meaning none of the money spent before that, none of it gets reported. So why can these groups now spend virtually unlimited money from individuals, from unions, from corporations? Well, it's because of a recent Supreme Court ruling. And thanks to a loophole already in the tax code, if those groups set themselves up as a certain kind of nonprofit, they can use that now unlimited money without reporting who or which corporation or which labor union it's from. They're funding attack ads across the country like this one.
I don't know what smells worse, my diaper or this new bill.
Coalition to Protect Seniors is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Yikes, Coalition to Protect Seniors. So who is that? Well, the New York Times tried to track it down, and they got nowhere, just like we did today. It used to be that secrecy in politics only covered the voting booth, but now the secret ballot has company. Call it the secret buck. With us now is Bill Allison, editorial director of the Sunlight Foundation, also senior legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin. So, Jeffrey, how much of a game changer was the Supreme Court ruling?
Citizens United, January of this year. This was the decision that Barack Obama attacked in his State of the Union message. Justice Alito reacted visibly. Basically, what this decision said is that corporations, labor unions, organizations have free rein to spend as much money as they want, and reporting restrictions are very much not included in that either. So it really, Citizens United opened this wide up.
Bill Allison, you've been tracking campaign spending for a long time. How does this cycle compare to what we've seen before when it comes to transparency?
We are in much worse shape than we were before. There are about 160 some groups now that are running these types of ads. There were about 80 in the 2006 cycle altogether, and we're still not at the end. I mean, there are groups popping up even today.
And if people, Bill, are, running or funding these groups, if they want to stay in the shadows, is there any way to find out who they really are?
It's really difficult. I mean, all they have to file are very minimal information about them, the name of a treasurer, the name of a custodian of records, and these folks can be working for PR firms or lobbying firms, or in one case, the West Virginia Conservatives Fund it appears that the person who holds the records or the address of this organization is a residential address. So it's really difficult to find out who these organizations are and who's behind them.
What's the Supreme Court reason for allowing this?
Well, it basically, the main idea is that the Supreme Court said corporations are like individuals, and individuals have a right. If I wanted to buy ads to support or oppose a candidate on my own, I could. Mm-hmm. And basically they extended that idea to organizations. That is counter to about 90 years of previous Supreme Court precedent, which had said, look, organizations have power that's beyond what individuals have, so the government can regulate those, can limit how much they can spend, can limit disclosure. But if corporations are exactly the same as people, that's a different scenario, and they have much greater freedom.
And the campaign finance law that just went down in the Senate, would that have made a difference in this?
It certainly would have. That was the fix that President Obama was talking about in the State of the Union address when he got into a confrontation with the Supreme Court. It got more than a majority in the Senate, but it was filibustered, and so it would have had some more disclosure requirements, but not as much as the old law, but it lost.
You know, Bill, there's some people going to be sitting at home saying, well, look, what's the big deal? I mean, why does this really matter?
I think what is really difficult, if you look at that Nick Rahal ad that you began the piece with, you have no idea who's paying for that. Now, that may be somebody who's concerned about support for Arab Americans or running this particular committee for Barack Obama. It could be somebody who's upset about Nick Rahal because of his work on coal mining legislation. If the voters don't know who's paying for the ad, it's very hard to be skeptical. It's very hard to say, I'm going to caveat vote, or I'm going to take a close look at this and maybe take this with a grain of salt.
It also seems now a trend. You have a lot of money starting to move from political parties, which have to report its donors, to these outside groups, which don't have to. And what does it mean looking ahead for this next presidential election?
Well, I mean, I think the real question is what is going to happen. I mean, we don't know if the Disclose Act is going to be passed. Even if it is passed, it's going to take the FEC some time to set up the mechanisms to report all this money. And you may go into 2012 flying completely blind about these different groups. And if you look at what's happening in this election, you have these groups. There's American Crossroads and Crossroads GPS. These are all set up by friends of Karl Rove, Republican operatives, and they're almost functioning as a shadow Republican Party. And the difference is, unlike the Republican Party, they don't have to say who's paying the freight for these ads.
Can foreigners, buy ads and do this? Or could a foreigner set up a group?
Right now, that's something that I believe campaign finance law still bars. But the problem with a lot of these organizations is, especially the C4s, we really don't know who the donors are, and it's entirely possible that foreign money could get in or be, come through a couple of different channels, maybe with a second party donor. It makes it really hard to follow the money and know who's giving what.